When you get the idea, you got to just start writing the idea.
All right, you guys ready?
Do it. Yeah. We were born ready.
All right. That's
right.
good. Good to start.
Okay, this is John Foster talking tennis. Interview part 1. Chris, take 1. Hold on.
Hello, everybody. John Foster, talking tennis with John Foster. We have a special guest here today, a friend of mine, former colleague, my boss at one time, and we've known each other many, many years. I think I won a big tournament one time that he was running at Westside with John Lucas and all those people.
Yeah,
remember
right.
that one?
Yeah.
And well, we're here to talk 2 parts here. We're going to talk a little bit about Chris. I want everybody to know about Chris. He's one of the best coaches in the world, and I know a lot of coaches. I've worked for the best coaches. I know Nick Bollettieri. I know Rick Macy, worked for him for many years. Chris Everett, John Everett, worked for that academy. I've been around the best of the best, and trust me, this is the best. Right up there with everybody, if not better than everybody, okay? And we're going to find out today about that. And then also, the second part, talking tennis with John Foster, I'm going to show you, we're going to talk about what I've been doing, Chris, and I want to get Chris's professional opinion on ambidextrous tennis. I'll tell you what I've been doing the last couple of years. I think it's going to change tennis and the way it's taught and the way it's played. And we'll talk about that in the second part. But first, let's get to Chris Bovett. Chris is from England. And I'm going to let Chris talk about himself a little bit. He was one of the best players in the world. I think he played, how many Grand Slams did he play?
Played 9.
9,
Yeah.
okay. Well, he's 9 Grand Slams, played them all. Wimbledon, US Open.
Qualifying at Wimbledon, qualifying French Open.
Okay.
Lost in the last round of the qualifying in both those, but played 4 US Opens, 3 Australian Opens.
Mm-hmm. And talking about, he's good friends, grew up in England, friends with John Newcomb in England. How did that come about, where you and Nuke became friends?
Well, my parents were billeting Australian tennis players, and they ended up billeting John Newcomb because his best friend was staying with us, and that was Jeff Knox. And so Nuke stayed with us for, I guess, several weeks, and then when I emigrated to Australia, I stayed with the Newcombs. I lived with the Newcombs for about 6 months. Yeah, so I've known Nuke a long time.
But you haven't talked to him in many years, huh?
I haven't talked to him in a long
Maybe
time
he'll see
because,
this.
I haven't talked to him for a long time. He's in Australia. I guess he's in different businesses and stuff, and I really haven't been out of Houston, so that's not able to do that.
Now, he's also coached some players that have reached the top 50 in the world, top 20 in the world.
Yeah.
David Dowling, my friend, I saw David last night. He said to say hello.
Okay.
And Duke Odizar.
Yeah.
So these 2 players, they beat John McEnroe and Fleming.
Yeah, right.
At Forest Hills. We have one lunch together. Yeah.
Tournament champions.
Yeah, we got to get some of those pictures and
Nice
put them to
to
show
play.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was semifinals. They beat them.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I don't remember who they beat in the final. That was good enough.
I
think that was the only loss that McEnroe and Fleming had the whole year.
Yeah,
So,
I heard, because I just interviewed McEnroe,
Okay.
and I threw it, I did, because David always says, and it was kind of a jab, because I thought I was going to be hanging out with McEnroe later, but he was tired, and we'd met before, and so I go, well, John, I know you only lost 3 tennis matches 1 year, singles, and 2 doubles matches, really it's 3, because you don't count the one with David. That you lost against David, yeah. But it's in the interview, which I haven't really put out yet. I'm kind of holding back. I need to get that out there for everybody. But anyway, so tell me about Duke. Duke got to what, 20 in the world in singles?
I don't think it was 20. I think it might have been 60.
60, yeah.
60 in singles.
Yeah.
And I think there were 20 in doubles. I think David and Duke were 20 in doubles. And
Yeah.
Duke was, I started coaching Duke, I think it was about 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And Bob Wren, who was a English professor at the University of Houston, would sometimes bring these guys over from Nigeria or wherever it was. I think it was Nigeria. And Duke was one of them. And I knew Bob Wren because I was a student at the University of Houston. He was my English professor. He liked tennis. And so he knew I was on the tennis team. He knew about me. So when he wanted somebody to coach these kids, he would bring them to me. So that's how I got Duke as a student.
Okay.
And
were you still playing? You were still playing some pro tennis tournaments back then when you were coaching a little bit, or no? When you went to coaching, you went straight?
Well, I retired at 26, and the reason I retired is because there was no money. In fact, the reason I retired was because I played the French Open.
Right.
And it sounds kind of crazy, but I got to the last round of qualifying, but then in the doubles, I've been there for like 10 days, paying my hotel and everything, and my wife was with me, and it was just so expensive. Yeah. And there was no money, of course. No money. So the expense of playing the French Open killed me. So it's kind of like ironic that, you play in a Grand Slam and it costs so much money that you have to retire. so at 26, I'm through, and I didn't plan on that, but I was, and I came back to Houston, started teaching immediately, and but I kept playing River Oaks.
Right.
In 75, I retired in 71. 75 was when I played Reeson and Rosewall. River Oaks.
You played Kenny Rosewall.
Yeah, in the qualifying.
And you knew Rosewall pretty well.
No, I didn't know him real well. I knew him a little bit. He, he was my mother's hero and my hero. Yeah. So, Rosewall was the guy I really liked to emulate and all that kind of stuff. Right. And so when I was living in Australia, Ken Rosewall called up to my house to practice with me, but I was sick. Yeah. I was very sick, and so I couldn't play with him, and I was like really bitterly disappointed. Mm. So to play Rosewall in a match that counted on the center court at River Oaks was like incredible to me. And my mother was there; she got to watch it. My father had passed away, so that was kind of a little bit disappointing. But so Rosewall had to qualify, even though he was number 2 in the world, because he wasn't a member of WCT. And that tournament was a WCT tournament, and so anybody that was not a member of WCT had to qualify. Right. And it just so happened that Connors, Rosewall, and Orantes, who were 1, 2, and 3 in the world then, none of them were members of WCT. So Connors, I think, had to qualify in St. Louis, and he won the tournament. Right. Orantes had to qualify in Barcelona, and he won the tournament. And Rosewall had to qualify in River Oaks, and he won the tournament. And so I lose to Rosewall, and which I kind of expected.
Playing your idol, huh?
Well, yeah,
how was that?
And the crazy thing about it was that when I was 7, I think I was 7 years old, maybe 8, my mom took me to Wimbledon, and I got to watch Rosewall play on the center court. We didn't have seats or anything, but it was an area that I could kind of crawl into and look through and watch this match. Yeah. And I remember dreaming about maybe one day I could play him on the center court of Wimbledon. And so, this was a culmination. 1975, it was, and I got in the tournament. I lost to him in the last round, which wasn't a real good draw. He did win the tournament, like I said. But I got in as lucky loser when I played Reeson. He was 12 in the world.
Reeson.
Yeah.
Right.
And to show you the strength of the River Oaks tournament, Reeson was ranked 12 in the world and unseeded in the top 8. Okay, that shows you how strong River Oaks used to be.
So everybody played.
It was a tough tournament. It was a tough tournament, a great tournament, and so that was a great experience for me, and I couldn't beat him. I mean, he was my hero, and I can't beat my hero.
Do you think that had an effect on the match?
Well, it did. I played all right. I mean, he just, my backhand was my strength. His backhand was his strength. And my tactics were sort of, I don't know, Rosewallish, and so I couldn't out-tag. I couldn't beat him. I mean, he was better than me.
Now his big thing, he did beautiful slice, laid it back, and then he'd come through it. Did he also come over his backhand too? No, it was all slice.
Everything was slice.
Laid it flat back and just beautiful. Yeah. Do you remember a guy named Ray Garrido from Cuba?
Yeah,
that was my doubles partner.
I played him.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. The #1 Cuban tennis player, Ray. I hope Ray sees this. But we won the state. It was hard. He was a little guy. Yeah. People didn't know he was top 20 in the world. He couldn't make money on the pro tour, so he played professional highlight. Ray.
Right, really?
We were doubles partners, and Ray, with his bad temper, I grew up playing football, baseball, boxing. So you could hit me upside the head, and I'd listen. Yeah, I got it, Ray. And I would double fault, or I'd hit my friend. He goes, "Just get your first serve in." Okay, Ray, I'll get it in. And I'd miss, and he turned to me like, like this, and then go, get the next one in. And I'm like, I got it, Ray, I got it. And most people would crumble at that, but I mean, I could deal with that, you know? And people were like, so they used to ask him, Ray, do you want another doubles partner? You know, we were #1 doubles. And he'd go, no, I like John. He's the only guy I know that can double fault 5 times and hold serve. Anyway, that's good. I like that. Yeah, Ray. Yeah. Hey, I want to get the 2 stories that Chris tells that I always do when I coach, and I use Chris's stuff a lot. And I always give coaches credit, like when I learn something from Chris, and he's always talking about field. I'd like to get into that. Boy, we need about 3 hours of tape to cover all this stuff. Yeah. We'll make this short. We'll get through a couple of things. But 2 good stories I got from Chris that I share with kids sometimes about getting every ball, the one at Wimbledon. But then there was one that's a technical thing that I want to share with everybody so you can learn from Chris's experience. And he got this from John Newcomb. You want to tell the story, Chris? About Dallas match?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was, I was 20 years old, just came over here. I was a freshman at Pan American, and I played the Dallas Invitational, and I played this guy called Dennis Ralston, who was, I think, #2 seed, might have been 2, 3, 4 in the world. He was very high up in the world. And I was up 4-1 in the final set against him, and really honestly thought I was going to win. I mean, I just thought I was going to win. I believed it. And so he was kind of a little bit nervous. He was double faulting a little bit, and so I felt he was kind of choking. So I increased my attack against him, moving into the net and all that kind of stuff, and putting pressure on him because I thought that was the thing to do.
Right.
And he came through with some great shots and ended up beating me 6-4 in the third. And I wasn't real disappointed because I thought, I'd come this close to beating a guy, top 10 in the world. So just was going to be a little bit more work, and I was going to be up there.
You were at 4-1 in the third?
4-1 in the third, and
against the number top 5
30-15, I think it was 30-15. Mm-hmm. So in any case, John Newcomb watched the match, and when I came off the court, he congratulated me, and I remember this was the Samuel Grand Tennis Center in Dallas. So I'm walking from the courts up to the clubhouse, and I'm excited. Excited to call my parents in Australia and tell them. I was hoping I could tell them I'd won, but that's okay. And so Nuke said, "Yeah, you played well, Chris," and I'm feeling good, And he said, "But you put too much pressure on him at the end." And my heart just sank. I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, he said he was choking." I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "Well," you should have backed off him a little bit, let him choke." And he gave me an example. He said, "You don't like to fight, do you?" And I said, "No." He said, "What happens if I push you in a corner and hit you? What are you going to do?" He said, "If you can't get out of the corner, are you going to hit back, or are you just going to roll over, or what?" I said, "Well, I'm going to hit back." He said, "Right, that's what you did to Dennis. You pushed him in a corner. You gave him no choices." He said, "You should have backed off and let him choke." And I said, "Whoa," I said, "Do you do stuff like that?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You do?" And he said, "Yeah." And I'm just thinking to myself all of a sudden, wow, I think I'm this close. Now all of a sudden, and distance is
wrong strategy.
Yeah, right. And because I didn't even know that. I thought I was doing exactly the right thing. I was really happy, and so I just opened up to the fact that wow, there's more to this game than just doing that, And coming from Nuke, of course, I trusted what he said. And
now Newcomb was, and I read his book. I didn't finish it, but I read enough. He was the #1 player in the world for sure, just like Federer was for 7 years. But there was 1971 or 70, the #1 player in the world. Maybe 2 years that he was considered the best player in the world. John Newcomb, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's right. But
okay.
Well, he won Wimbledon. I'm sure he won the U.S. Open. He won the Australian Open. Yeah. He had a great serve. Nuke was very confident.
Yeah.
But I've got an interesting story about him if you want to hear it.
Okay, sure. So, that's what we're here for.
I think I'm not sure who told me this. It might have been Nuke, but I don't know if it was or not. But he was playing juniors in Australia against Tony Roach.
Right.
And Roach was sort of like from the country. He was an up-and-coming player. And Nuke was the big guy. I mean, he was like going to be the great player and all this kind of stuff. And from Sydney, and Roachy was from Wagga Wagga, which was a town on the border of New South Wales and Victoria. And so, in any case, Roach is putting up a fight, and Nuke's struggling, and Mrs. Newcomb, she was funny. Mrs. Newcomb yells out to him, "Nuke, are you going to feel sorry for yourself, or are you going to play tennis?" And he remembered that, because when he played Rosewall in the Wimbledon final, Rosewall was the older guy, and he'd been in the final before.
Right.
And when Rosewall had played Drobny in '54, I think it was, the crowd was all for Drobny because he was old, and they kind of cheered everything he did, and poor Rosewall didn't get any cheers. Well, now it's the other way around. Rosewall got all the cheers, Nuke didn't get anything, so he started feeling sorry for himself.
Oh, right.
And he said that, he remembered, he's down, and the crowd's clapping everything, and that Rosewall does, and he says, he starts feeling sorry for himself, and so
His mom?
he remembered what his mom said about, Nuke, you're going to feel sorry for yourself, or you're going to play tennis? And he said, that really helped,
Yeah.
because he remembered that.
You got it.
So he ended up beating Rosewall.
Well, let's talk about one more story here, and we got when you were at Wimbledon hitting on the wall, and somebody came
Queen's
up
Club.
from the. Can you tell that little story? Yeah.
It was Queen's Club. It was I was probably about 15 years old, and I was hitting on the wall at Queen's Club, and there was a balcony, and this guy was looking down at me, and I knew who it was. I recognized him. It was Roy Emerson, #1 player in the world, and the tournament was going on then. I wasn't in the tournament. The tournament was going on then, and so I saw him up there, and I said, "Do you want to hit?" Because I didn't want to stop him from hitting. And he said, "Yeah, when you're through." I said, "Well, I'm through, So he came down the stairs, opened the door, introduced himself to me, because I knew who he was.
Right.
And he said, "You want to hit some?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, let's go." So we went on to one of the back wooden courts there at Queen's Club. This is Queen's Club in London.
Right.
And back court there. And I am 15 years old, hitting with the #1 player in the world. And it was like an amazing experience for me, There was nobody to watch it, unfortunately. I was hoping people would see, and they didn't.
Nobody's coming out.
And then this other guy comes along, Ram Krishnan, who was 7 in the world then, and he asked if he could hit with us. And Emma said, "Do you mind?" And I said, "No, that's great." So I had Emerson, Krishnan, and me hitting 2-on-1s.
Nobody's watching. Nobody's coming out to see you
Nobody
do
saw
this.
it. Nobody saw it.
Yeah.
Just it's a great experience.
Now the story, he told me that a long time ago, which I always tell people, is that you were doing that and you learned something, or you told me, and I remember this, that they said, "Chris, you got to get every ball."
Yeah.
And what happened
Well,
there?
what happened was, when I was by myself and there were 2 people at the net, they hit a ball wide of the court, and I sort of went for it, then stopped. And Emma said, "Why didn't you go for that?" And I said, "Well, it was out." He said, "No, you don't understand. You run for everything." Okay, so I said, "Oh, okay." So when Emma was there, he did the drill, and I hit a ball inadvertently about a court away, and he chased after it and ran and got it back. I didn't think he was even go for it. I put my racket in my left hand, and he hit it back at me, and I barely got it back and hit it up in the air, and he raced across and took it out of there. So that was a vision or an image of what he meant by run for everything.
Wow.
That was my idea.
Well, we could talk about this, and I hope we got to do this again, because there's many more stories that Chris could share. And like that's one about going for every ball. What I talk about with the kids, it's called commitment. And when a kid, Nick Saviano talks about in his book, and I recommend that book, Maximum Tennis, to everybody. It's one of the must reads, Maximum Tennis. Have you read it? Maximum? Yeah. And speed is not about how fast you run. It's being committed to getting the ball. And if you're committed, you're on your way. Sometimes before the ball's even hit, your mind just goes there. John Foster, Talking Tennis with John Foster. Thank you, Chris, for coming. We're going to have Chris also in our next segment, so stay tuned. And we're going to talk about ambidextrous tennis coaching. John Foster, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo, Black Gold Productions. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Cool.
That was nice.
That's good.
Alrighty.
All right. I didn't even need my notes.
You did a good job.
Yeah. So I'll put on my tennis. Do you want a little drink?
I mean, there
And
should
then
be
we'll
plenty
do
of
one more.
space in there.
I'll
It's
put
a
on a
64
tennis
gig.
shirt.
So
It's just, like I said, that counts down. I can't guarantee what it's going to do after it hits that down. It might just keep on going. It might just stop recording because it feels like it's a good, you know.
Better put another card in the picture that I have on my.
I mean, that's the only thing on there.
President Bush and
That one
and
clip.
Chuck
That's the only thing
Norris.
we've done
He's
today.
the guy on the end, and so he's got some great stories.
20 megs is at like
Fall very well,
4 to
right?
8 gigs.